We're gonna make this discussion for our next council session. Resolution 2023-10, a resolution setting certain business license fees.
Excuse me, Mayor, actually, I just talked to the city attorney, that one is going through.
Remember? Okay.
I move that we approve resolution 2023-10.
I second.
Any discussion? How does council vote?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. A motion, looks at council approvals. Catering permit for Bayou, June 10th, 2023.
Mayor, Council, Josh Carson could not be here this evening, and so he usually he does this every year where he closes the street parking lot to his bar, and he has like a little party out there with a band. This is the same day as the Summerfest, so he'll be at Summerfest with one group and over here with another. But he knows that he has to put up the fencing and everybody has to have bands and everything for the ones who are drinking outside. Usually Brian's here, but in the past we've not had any problems with the Bayou Bar for doing this. But he knows that the cops will be patrolling his area if there is anything. He just wanted to have another charity event outside.
I would move that we approve the catering permit for the Bayou Bar for June 10th, 2023.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I would just say, tell him
I know, I told him.
to you send those guys down to Summerfest, you know. We're gonna share here.
He probably would.
All right, seeing no other discussion. What's that? Yeah, how does council vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. At this time, we're going to open discussion. So if you would like to approach the lectern, I do ask that you state your name and address. And then we traditionally limit you to 5 minutes for discussion. And anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition or in favor of, we do ask that you wait, take your turn, and approach the lectern. Anyone speaking out of turn in the audience may be asked to leave. And so we'll go ahead and open for open discussion.
Hi, my name is Betsy Bauer. My work address is 260 Delmar. Is it on?
I think so. I mean,
Is there a green light?
There we go.
There we go.
260 Delmar Street, Unit 2. I made some flyers.
Thank you.
So I'm here today to request a permit for beekeeping and also to have a conversation around why there needs to be a permit for beekeeping in the city of Mills. I was looking through the ordinances, which I didn't know. So I started beekeeping without a permit, but I did register it with the state. And the state does have regulations for beekeeping, which I am obeying. And so the addition of getting a permit through the city of Mills is, I'm questioning that and why. There's a couple of things on here that I was concerned about. One is, where is it? The main one is that in B, okay, it's 6.08.050, permit notice and objection. In B, it says anyone within the impacted area may object to the issuance of a permit upon reasonable grounds. So, which includes if one person is allergic, they can object to me having a beehive. And so my question around that is how would they know it's my bee? And there's other pollinators that sting, there's other pets that sting. Why wouldn't we require a permit for dogs or some other dangerous animal if, we're requiring it for bees? And I haven't heard of requiring a permit for beekeeping anywhere else, and I've talked to a lot of beekeepers in Montana and Colorado and around the state, and nobody has ever heard of needing a permit. So I'm just wondering if we could collectively update the ordinances here so that we don't require a permit.
Just to clarify, we do require permits for dogs and cats, but
Oh, okay.
licensing, I should say. When you reviewed the state statutes, do you feel that those aligned with what we had here, or did they, contradict each other?
The ones, the main one is anyone within, that if somebody's allergic to a bee, that's grounds for me to have to move or destroy my hive. That didn't align.
Okay. How does the state address any sort of issues with neighbors, or how does it have you reach out to your neighbors and let them know that you're gonna have one there?
I believe that it requires you to move them away from the fence and have your own water so that they don't go looking at your neighbors for the water.
Okay.
Mayor, just for what it's worth, in terms of local permitting, the city of Casper also requires a permit before you establish a, yes, it does. It's 6.04.050. The code in Mills is directly modeled on the pre-existing code for the city of Casper.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not know that. From all the beekeepers I talked to in Casper, they told me it did not require a permit, that they just needed to register with the state as well.
Now, they also have provisions there, so
See, I
ours
know
is
that
not
kinda works
really
that way.
novel. And I wanted that clear. I mean, there is a section, I guess, and I'd have to review it carefully, but in answer to your earlier question, the municipalities do have the ability to additionally regulate where they see fit. So the fact that the state has one set of conditions does not preclude the city from having a set of conditions.
I understand that.
I'd be open to having a discussion separately from what we're currently trying to address here, which is, do we need to make sure that our ordinance falls more in line with the state statutes so that, we're not just crossing wires here. But at this moment, I guess my question to our attorney would be, you've already got your hive established.
Yes.
So we're kind of going about things a little bit backwards, where we're asking for the permit after it's been established.
Yeah.
What are our, I guess,
The remedies?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the answer is there really are none. The way that the ordinance is drafted, it required a permit prior to establishing the beehives within the municipal boundaries. There's no exception for folks who move them in unaware of the provisions of the ordinance, and I'm certain that they were moved in innocently. I know you didn't just intend to ignore the conditions of the law. I'm confident of that. We don't have anything to address that, however. So as far as I'm aware of, this hasn't come up in terms of a citation. There is no existing citation. You are in violation of it. We're not the citing authority. That would be another subdivision of the municipality. So right now you're kind of frankly running afoul of the law, and the question is, is a citation issued, which basically would end up requiring that you remove the hives at the end of the day. I don't know that that's an answer to the question, but what you probably ought to attempt to do is get a permit as quickly as possible if you're able to obtain one.
I may say something too, Mayor and Council, is I had a Sherry reach out to me as she also got the flyer. She is the one that is allergic, or actually her daughter is allergic to bees, as well as the neighbors next to her as well. I don't know if one of them is here tonight, but I'm just putting on record that she did reach out to me and is against it because her daughter's allergic.
I agree with Ms. Bauer to a certain extent. How would you identify that the bee belongs to her more so? How do we keep bees out of that individual's property,
And the way generally that works is actually a separate topic. It would not be presumed that if a person was stung that your bees were the guilty bee parties. So that presumption would not be there. even though the provision allowing an allergic person to object to the permit and preclude it is in there, that's more precautionary. There is no built-in assumption that bees from your place are responsible for what might occur. And certainly they very well may not be. Assuming anything happened, which so far nothing has.
Yeah, well, and someone who said she wanted to try and make it, but wasn't able to drive here tonight, said she is allergic to bees, but she said she can't live without the bees. So, and thanked me for having them because her garden did better than ever last year. So, I understand that I should have gotten a permit before now, and I am requesting one. And also, when I was looking, I think my friend Seth found these online, but I was really struggling to find out anything on the City of Mills website of how to access this. And then when it said to call animal control, like that number didn't exist in the Maps app, so I also struggled to find that.
Right, and unfortunately our code is not yet online.
Oh, okay.
We're
Okay.
working on getting it online, but it
Mhm.
is not presently online.
Okay.
But they're all available in the office here. So we have the ordinance online.
I haven't, yeah, the community service officers brought me one.
Okay.
What link was it that you were trying to hop on that had the phone number? Or how'd you find that CSO number? Was it from our website?
For the animal control one, I was searching it on Google,
Okay.
and I think the animal control is with the police department here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's just a little confusing for me how to go about this,
Yeah.
and so that's also my request too, to make it easier for somebody to get a permit and to know that they even need one in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my recommendation would be to just proceed with going forward with the permitting process. And, you know, I guess the next step would be you reaching out, notifying your neighbors, and then.
I passed out 60 of these flyers to my neighbors. I guess Shelley got one.
Sure.
No one told me that they were not okay with bees.
Pat, sorry. The state attorney, sorry. First name, sorry.
That's all
We're
right.
not that informal at this moment, sorry about that. So what is the process for the neighbors identifying?
So what she now, and generally what she now needs to do, I mean, you haven't been cited with anything. I realize they're already there, but that's informational. So what you now need to do is see if you can, comply with the terms of the permit. And what you need to do is provide notice to the town of Mills Animal Control Division and to residents and property owners within 100 yards of the intended colony, 90 days, it says 90 days prior to the proposed establishment of the colony. Now, you will not be able to comply with that, but what you should do is provide notice to the town and to people within that distance,
When you say the town, is that?
to Anna Mills Animal Control.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and so, your neighbors within 100 yards of where you have your colony, so that you can permit it within the next 90 days. Now,
Okay.
you are running afoul of it right now,
I
but
understand.
the other part of that is it is not as if you have been cited. No one has cited you with a violation. So you'll be seeking the official establishment of the colony within 90 days,
Yeah.
or pick a period that's 90 days out.
Yeah.
And provide notice. Now, people do have the opportunity to object, as you know.
Yeah, I'm across the street from a trailer park, so there's several more homes to go to. And I will do that, and I will contact the police department and move forward.
And I guess my other suggestion would be is if you know that you have individuals who will be objecting specifically and that are within that distance, if you don't know,
Yeah.
you don't know. But if you
Mhm.
do know, you may wish to discuss with them and see if they're like the other individual you mentioned and would not be as unyielding as it might be feared.
I mean, most people who have an allergy to bees have an EpiPen and their medication they need on them at all times. So I'm not, and I went to Instacare to ask about me just carrying an EpiPen in case somebody around me gets stung, and she said that's not a good idea for me to give somebody a prescribed medicine, but she did say that there are plenty of resources to make those available for people in need.
So what you need to do from here is establish a date that you want your colony to be official and comply with those notice provisions, and give notice to animal control, which is a subdivision of the police department,
Yeah.
and proceed forward. That doesn't mean that ultimately this body will grant you the permit, because as you know, there are means to oppose it. And right now, as you know, you're actually, you're harboring illegal bees. So you want to get moving on that as quickly as you can.
If I go to jail for this.
No. Nor will the bees, but you might be required to remove them. So you do need to.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to say is that if I talk to animal control or the police department, because the community service officers who entered my shop without permission did not seem like they knew anything about beekeeping. And if they were going to handle my bees or not, but I feel like could there possibly be some kind of training so that the police or animal control is knowledgeable about some of the basics of beekeeping so that they handle them with care / just know about them, because I don't feel like the people I'm calling know more about it than me.
So that may be a question for other people, but the notice provision of it is just so the town knows where they are.
Of course, yeah.
And
that
our
makes sense.
CSLs are really great. We have a brand new one actually who would be more than happy, as well as our chief, to come and listen. I think that they'd be the first to say, I don't want to touch the bees, but they're very open to listening and learning.
Cool.
And I did discuss with the issue about the proper entry into your property.
Thank
as
you, I
well.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We look forward to seeing the rest of your permitting process, and hopefully we can get something worked out. I think the only question we had was, the one that Councilman Butcher identified was, how far is your hive from the property line?
It's on is the property line where the sidewalk would be? Because it's not, so it's
Fencing
like,
is what they're looking at mainly, so flyways is what they're concerned with in
it
the statute.
faces the street, and so I don't know if the street is city property or if that counts, but it's not near anybody else's property.
Okay, so it's was it 25, did I read?
10, I think.
Situated 25 feet from developed public and private property.
Okay, so yeah, it's 25 feet from the next house over, or next trailer across the street.
Yeah, so as long as you're more than 25 feet, you're okay. That's the one question Councilman Butcher had was, how far you were. So.
Okay, and just
Developed
have extra
public
honey.
from the street.
my number is on that flyer.
So we have to make that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where it's at too. When we get to
Location.
Hi.
Hi. Good evening, members of council. My name is Seth Hollier. I run a business at 1010 Falcon Avenue, which is just about 2 blocks from Betsy's shop. I stand before you today not as a beekeeper, but as a concerned citizen who understands the value of beekeeping in our community. I've taken the time to study the existing ordinance on beekeeping in our town, and I've also looked at state statutes surrounding beekeeping. I believe that there are significant issues with our current ordinance that should be addressed. Firstly, if we look at the 100-yard radius for notification of beekeeping activities, while it may seem a reasonable distance, it is important to note and understand that bees can travel up to 5 miles for foraging. This means that the 100-yard radius is far from sufficient to cover the area where bees may actually be present. In fact, if we're trying to take the rule to its logical conclusion, a beekeeper would need to notify almost the entire town of mills which is not only impractical but unnecessary. Secondly, the ordinance requires a flyaway barrier as stated in section 6.08.060D. It states, D, may not entirely be practical or effective. Bees' flight patterns are influenced by various factors, including weather conditions and availability to food sources. They are not likely to be constrained by flyaway barriers. The requirement seems to be based on a misunderstanding of bee behavior and does not appear to be in state regulations. Thirdly, the ordinance requires registry of colonies to be inspected by town clerk and made available to the police department and fire department, which, while it's important for these entities to be aware of the locations of the bee colonies for emergency planning, it is equally important to ensure that the inspections are carried out by trained personnel. Bees are delicate creatures, and improper handling can cause harm to the bees and potentially lead to defensive behavior, increasing the risk of stings. Furthermore, section 6.08.060F states that any bee colony not residing in a hive structure intended for beekeeping, or any swarm of bees, or any colonies residing in a standard or homemade hive which by virtue of its condition has obviously been abandoned by a beekeeper, is unlawful and may be summarily destroyed or removed from the city. This doesn't take into account that bees are wild animals and can naturally create hives in various locations. It is not always a result of beekeepers' negligence. Moreover, the destruction of the hives could have a negative impact on local bee population and by extension the local ecosystem. Section 6.08.060E requires beekeepers to ensure that a convenient source of water is available at all times to the bees. While it's reasonable to ask beekeepers to provide water for their bees, it is important to note that bees are free-flying insects, and they can and will seek out water sources beyond that the beekeeper provides. The requirement might give a false sense of security that bees will only stay around their hive, which is not consistent with natural behavior. Lastly, section 6.08.060C requires all hives to be located at least 10 feet from adjoining property, with the back of the hive facing the nearest abutting private property lines. This requirement seems arbitrary and does not take into account that bees don't recognize property lines. They will fly where they need to go and find food, and they can easily cross property lines regardless of where the hive is located. Lastly, the ordinance places a significant burden on beekeepers both in terms of time and financial responsibility. The requirement to notify residents within a 100-yard radius is not only arbitrary, but also places an undue burden on the beekeepers. This is particularly true with hobbyist beekeepers who may not have the resources to comply with such a requirement. In light of these issues, I urge that Council reconsider this ordinance. The state already has adequate regulations in place to ensure that beekeepers are operating safely and responsibly. Our town ordinance should align with the state regulations rather than impose additional and unnecessary burdens on local beekeepers. Thank you for your time and consideration.
So,
Sorry to interject.
never mind.
Are you familiar with the water source? Is that in line with state statute?
That is technically in line with state statute, which, again, doesn't necessarily mean that we should be redundantly implying the same ordinance from a city standpoint.
Well, in fact, the state statute used to regulate the density of beekeepers, which would presumably not be something that urban beekeepers would desire, correct?
That is, I think, technically correct. Also, please be aware that I am not a beekeeper, so my research is strictly more in line with how city ordinance applies to current state ordinance.
I do think that this warrants a separate conversation about our ordinance in relation to beekeeping, and I would love to hear from you guys in your group as far as how we can make that better. When was Casper's ordinance created?
That one I think is the oldest local one. I know it predates 2020 because in 2020 Powell, which actually banned the keeping of bees with it had allowed these and then it banned it, came back and reconsidered it, and I don't know if they opened up at that time or not. They were looking at it, but I'm guessing that it's probably around 2018, something like that.
It'd be worth asking what their
It would
intent
be,
was.
and to correct a misstatement, theirs allows the keeping of bees, but it does not require a permit. So I misspoke on that. Powell's, when they were looking at it, were looking at requiring a permit if they allowed it at all. So it is a situation where every municipality is a little bit different. I know Casper's requires has a 6 foot, the bees are supposed to fly 6 feet
It's a
high.
flyway
So,
barrier.
yeah, so.
Huh, okay. Yeah, thank you. I would open for you guys to come and help us fix that ordinance.
Okay. Thank you.
Definitely, yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jason Sandercook. I live at 215 North 3rd Avenue. This is a repeat of last year again. I'm kind of confused with why, but I'm here. I put my business license in for renewal, and I guess there's some questions to clear up again. So,
What's your business?
well, my main job is I'm a service manager for an oil and gas company. I work 60 to 80 hours a week, so I'm barely home anyway. But I deal with so many pissed off people all day. I have a shop at my house, and I buy cars and my own cars, and I fix them in my shop. And I go in, shut my door, there's no windows, no nothing. And when I get one done here, there, everywhere, I sell them. Well, it's one here, one there. I don't advertise. I don't even own them for sale sign. When I do have some for sale, I put it on Facebook or Craigslist. And this was a big deal between me and the chief of police last year. I talked to Mr. Holsteiger last year. Everything's been fine. No complaints, no issues, no nothing.
So just to clarify, your business is oil or is it?
I work in oil and gas, but my business for this is technically car sales. Because I don't work on other people's stuff, it's just my own personal stuff. So there's not really a name for it per se. So my business license is under car sales, because when I get done with them, I sell them. Well, if you sell more than 3 a year, the state of Wyoming requires you to have a dealer's license. Well, to do that, you have to have a permission from the city, which is the business license. So I'm just trying to comply with everything, and it's never been a problem all year. I mean, zero problem. I don't park anything on the street. You guys are welcome to drive by my house at any time. Everything's always nice, neat, orderly, backed in, proper. I mean, if you drive down the street, you have no idea that's even what I did. The only thing you can tell is I'm required to have a sign on my building. So I have one minimal 3x5, I think is the minimum one. On the side of my building with my name, my phone number, and it says by appointment only. And that's it.
But is that a requirement of the permit?
It's by the
itself?
state, not you
Oh, the
guys.
state for the dealership?
Yep.
So the state identifies you as a dealership?
Yeah, the only thing I'm different from the normal guy who sells something on Craigslist or Facebook is now I have to keep record of every single thing I do. And if you bought something from me, I can give you a dead tag. That's the only difference.
So I think the issue here is that the original permit was allowed for a hobby type of fix-up and resale, and this has grown into more of a dealership as it is identified by the state.
Well, it's just because I've sold more than 3 in a year.
And so what we're running into is that your property isn't zoned for commercial. And so you're in a tough situation where, although it may be your hobby, my recommendation would be to go to your planning and zoning board and request that your property be rezoned for commercial, so that you can keep the business going.
Honestly, I care less about the business, I really don't. I don't do this for a business. I really do it to keep my sanity in the evenings. But by selling 3 in a year, I'm required to have it, and your chief of police told me I had to have a business license to pass it by him last year, so I did. I complied with everything. I mean, by the time I get the permits, the bonds, everything else, it costs me a bunch of money a year. If I don't have to spend that, I'm fine with it. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm still, when I come home at night, that's what I do, is I just work on my stuff.
The other issue would be that you have vehicles that are unlicensed, which you're obviously going to sell. But the way that
Oh.
a residential property works is that you're only allowed one unlicensed vehicle per property. So you're
Right.
in violation of the ordinances that way as well. So, I guess if you want to continue with the business as it is, whether or not it's your, form of release for your stressful job at work during the day, my recommendation would be to approach the planning and zoning and ask for a rezone so you could be allowed to be a commercial business there.
Okay.
And that would be the avenue I would encourage you to go, if the attorney has any comment.
No, I think that's correct. The problem you're always gonna face is that because of its nature, it's hard not to regard it from a governmental perspective as a business, because you're selling at least 3 cars every year annually. You have a sign up, et cetera, et cetera. So, from our perspective, it's a business in a residential area. And so you should do what you can to comply with the municipal ordinances so that we, you don't run afoul of them, and we don't have to keep dealing with this either if we can avoid it.
Oh, yeah, no, I've tried to comply the whole time. That's why I got the license, so I paid all the bonds and insurance. I carry a $2 million policy on it now because I have to through the state. I'd much rather not have to pay for that if I didn't have to,
And another part of it too, to have a business in Mills, you have to have a fire inspection.
Yeah, that's fine. I just built the building, I had fire inspection, I built it, so.
Okay, and I'm not sure if that's correct, but.
No, it's all good. Honestly, I'm not trying to hide anything. I haven't since day one.
If we rezoned it, would that satisfy the unlicensed vehicles though?
Well, so if it was zoned commercial, then it would be like a regular dealership, basically,
Yeah.
in which there are a collection of unlicensed vehicles. So, yeah, that would satisfy that.
Okay.
Now, of course, it wouldn't, as we know, it wouldn't be automatic. There's things you have to do in order to rezone a piece of property.
And they'd have to stay off the public right away anyway. They couldn't be on the road.
No, not on the street.
Take in mind, I never, ever park anything on the street. At any point you can come by there, all my personal vehicles, even the 2 or 3 that I have that I'm never working on, they're always, always, always on my property, backed in, nice, straight, and perfect. I just
Yeah.
don't have garbage.
I drove by personally about 2 days ago and I was impressed. Your property is well maintained.
I
It's
have put
clean,
a pile of
it's-
money into that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I deal with so many pissed off people a day. That's just what I do. I just go in there, I turn the radio on, shut the door, and I just don't deal with people.
Yeah, so I commend you. You got your property, it looks nice, and the way that you keep your vehicles, it's very professional looking.
And like I said, I just try to comply with everything, and that's when I just came to renew it again. She said, come in, so I said, okay. And just like last year, I had nothing to hide, so I'm just here again.
Is Sabrina still in here? I don't think she is. Let's see. What we'll do is we'll get you the information for the planning and zoning board, and that way they can help you through that process. So
Okay.
that way we can make it a little bit less stressful for you.
Honestly, it's not a whole lot of stress when I go in there, shut the door. I gotta come in here, I'm not the which speaker, so I apologize if I sound retarded, but it is what it is.
No, we
So,
appreciate you coming and talking to
no
us,
problem.
so.
Is that fairly soon? Because I know my license is expires, and I don't want to have this halo in here, because I'll be honest with you, the chief of police hates my guts. And the day that expires in Midland, he'll be at my house.
I'll call you tomorrow with it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and we'll let them know that you're working through another process.
Okay.
So Sabrina, would you kindly get with Mr. Sandercock here and help him through the planning and zoning board? Just give a contact number, if you could. Thank you.
I think I've been through it before, because when I bought it, there was 3 properties in one. And I had it replatted and rezoned back then.
It's about the same process,
Okay.
yeah. So, thank you,
All right. Thank you.
appreciate it.
And Mayor, not to disrupt this, but in answer to your earlier question, Casper adopted their B ordinance in 2015 is when
Okay.
they adopted.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak in open discussion?
There's a lot of you here, you don't have nothing to say?
Just come to see all of our pretty faces.
It's pretty fun here.
Possibly. Good evening, my name is Tate Belden. I actually live in the city of Casper, 2116 Fontanelle. And I've been a beekeeper since I was in high school. And I just want to make myself available to anybody who has any questions. I was intimately involved with the update in 2015, getting the regulations passed. It was amazing to watch that process. Casper City Council had literally pages and pages and pages of new regulations, stipulations, all kinds of controls. And we walked up to him and we said, all this is covered by the state already, and if you just let the state handle this, you don't have to train anybody, you don't have to do any inspections, it isn't going to cost you any money, you don't have to pay anybody, it's already done. 201, the council was like, oh, cool, have a good day. And it was at that point that it went through and was passed. Part of our arrangement with the city of Casper to do that was, one of the big concerns is feral colonies. We have feral colonies in Wyoming. I cannot tell you, because they're feral, how many we have and where they are. When we find them, we try to collect them and contain them and put them in a managed yard so that they're no longer a problem for anybody. As such, we make ourselves available as volunteers, that if anybody finds a swarm or a feral colony or has a question, we have a number, give us a call. We have a whole team of volunteers that will come out, we take care of it. The whole idea is that the municipalities are not burdened with this. It's been 8 years, 7 years now, and we have yet to have a single complaint about what we're doing with all that. But again, if you have further discussions, planning meetings, work meetings, whatever, I would be happy to make myself available, answer questions, even have you come out to the house, take a tour of the yard, whatever you'd like to see. We normally run a Sunday afternoon open yard, where anybody that has an interest is welcome to come out. We do training every February. We open free classes for whoever wants to learn how to do beekeeping, and make sure that they are in compliance not only with the state laws, but with good practices and good keeping, make them good caretakers of their bees. So we open that to you, open myself to being available, whatever you need, and if you have any questions, please ask away.
What is your, do you have a group name or a Facebook page? Or?
There is a group, probably the best way to find us is at the website is NCBees, for NatronaCountyBees.org. We had a group called the Natrona County Beekeeping Association, and it's kind of, I want to say diluted. It's still out there, but it's not as fervently active as it has been in times past. We have the web page. We also have a page on Facebook that's handled by a couple of people, and I think that's the best way to get hold of us.
Could you give your number to the clerk?
You
Maybe
bet.
That would also be an easy way to
And
get
an
hold of
email
you.
even.
And
You
email.
bet. Make it easy for you.
So you said you were there for the 2015 ordinance in Casper.
Correct.
Do you recall why that came to be? Who brought it up or who wanted to create the ordinance?
It had been about a 4 or 5 year project by hobby beekeepers. They wanted to have the ability to keep bees within the city limits, and then prior to that it was a permit process, and it was very tightly regulated. And they made the mistake of also trying to do that with keeping chickens at the same time, try to do both of them together. That got really complicated, really messy, a lot of misunderstandings about what was going on. When they separated and said, okay, here's bees, we're going to do chickens later, the bees went right through.
Okay.
We had more problems with the chickens than they did with the bees.
Not too many people are brave enough to take on bees. So.
Well, I want to just touch base real quick on the allergic problem. According to CDC numbers, the incidences of actual allergic reactions, what we call a hypersensitive reaction within the United States, is 0.01% of the population. However, if you go back and look at the actual CDC numbers of people that have had deaths from stings, you're more likely to die by falling out of bed. The number that comes up of the U.S. population is a 0. And at least 6, if not 8. I didn't count the total numbers of zeros, 2, 4 at the end. It's an incredibly rare experience. And part of that is because our EMS systems are trained to handle that. We have good response times. It has really not been a problem.
I'm a big believer that dosage means allergy. So just because you welt up doesn't mean you're allergic.
And that's the thing, is that the active ingredient in bee venom, and it is a venom, is called melatonin. And it is designed, it is intended to trigger an immune reaction. That's where you get the itching and the swelling and the discomfort. It's supposed to do that. And so many people will see that, oh, well, I've got a lump on my arm. That's an allergic reaction. No, that's doing what it's supposed to do. That's how it works. So it's a very different kind of experience if you have an actual hypersensitive reaction.
I do know that it is a real thing though. My father is deadly allergic to
I
bees.
spent too many years working in
know
the
that
ER
it's a real
myself.
thing.
I've seen it go by. Yeah, it does happen. It's just incredibly rare.
I just would hate to see a colony shut down for the idea that somebody is allergic and maybe not allergic to the true form of, you know, your father.
We're here to share and help, so
Yeah,
whatever we can do.
thank you, I appreciate you speaking.
Oh, numbers.
Does anyone else want to speak for or against or any other topic? And you don't have to live in Mills, by the way, you can speak.
This is my cell, so I'll give you 24/7.
All right, seeing no other comments, we're going to go ahead and close the open discussion. Do I have a,
I move that we adjourn.
thank you.
I second.
Second, how does council vote?
How do you vote?
Aye.
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 Aye, motion passes.
You know, the funny thing is, when that was passed, there's a person. Well, the numbers are. If they ever brought them in.
We have blue today.
Yeah, those special people